Good evening to all the participants in Remtech. My name is Carlos Herrarte, and it's a pleasure for me to share with you our experience in this method soil contamination investigation project. First of all, we're going to talk about our company, just a brief introduction. Let's talk about the site investigation, what the things that we do for this site, the results, and our conclusions. Litoclean Group is an engineering company specialized in environment and safety. Litoclean helps its clients with soils and groundwater challenge in countries like Spain, Mexico, or Peru, and also in other cities where we have a project office. We began its journey as an independent company in 1999. This more than 20 years of professional development. Litoclean has become one of the leading companies in soils and water research and remediation in the countries where we are operating. For this site, we're talking about an old mining site. This is the 2007 aerial photo. This is the historical activity of where the place we're going to make a multi-method study. The project was carried out in a former industrial site from northern Spain with an area of 600,000 square meters. This industrial site was dedicated to the procurement of metallic zinc. The factory activity began in 1960 and was closed in 2005. It is located 2.5 kilometers from the center of the town, and there are residential buildings and industrial park in the surroundings. As you can see here in the corner, the left corner down of the slide, you can see this part of residential buildings and surroundings. This is the aerial photo of the current status in 2021. You can see now there is no industrial activity as dismantling, but they have the debris and a lot of old construction has been there. Soil at this site became largely contaminated with zinc and other metals, lead, cadmium, and copper. These metals contaminate the soil, pose risks to human health and environmental ecosystems. Due to uncertainties around soil heterogeneity and the section of the impacted area and the existence of mud ponds and landfills, a multi-method soil investigation was carried out in 2020 and 2021 in 2 phases. The main purpose of this characterization is to characterize the impact of the contamination in soils and evaluate several strategies for the most suitable and sustainable remediation approach. Our site of the youth, just according to the results of our client, we try to identify all the potential contaminants present in the soil, limit the presence of the identified pollutants in extent and in depth. First introduction to the hydrogeological behavior of the area, it's really complex. Identify potential exposure pathways of the detected contaminant to the potential site receptors, and investigate the potential remediation methodologies by means of pilot tests in the laboratory. The tools that we are going to use and we used before for this analysis are the borehole sampling, installation of monitoring wells, trial pits with our XRF in situ analytical methodology, the chemical analysis in the laboratory, the stratified soil leachate analysis, statistical data processing and interpolation graphic representation with interpolation maps, tomography profiles, geophysical of the depth of the mud ponds, and the tractability tests for the investigation of potential remediation additives. We divided the investigation into phases. In the first phase in July 2020, second phase in January 2021. Yes, in the first phase, we can sectorize all the site because it's a big problem, so we decide just to sector all the parts of the site. First, as a production zone, where are the former activities, the north mud ponds, and the south mud ponds debris. So we decide, as a result of this, try to make a specific investigation about how we can do it. So, for example, in the ponds, only is available to collect mud samples with a hand auger, just a manual thing in a safety way. we decide to design a geophysical approach to know the depth of each pond instead of matching drilling. In the debris zone, after the first investigation phase, we decide to reduce the density of trial pits for the second phase due to the lesser presence of heavy metals. As a geological or geological setting, this is the summary of the work done. The superficial soil level of the production and debris zone is constituted by heterogeneous fields from the industrial activity of the site. This has been identified the presence of low permeability materials, silt, or very low permeability materials under them. According to the piezometric levels and the groundwater characteristic, no continuous groundwater table was detected in the subsuperficial level. Potential deeper aquifer was not investigated. Right here. For the site investigation, a summary of the work done is in a field where you can see we made 200 trial pits with 16 monitoring wells and analyzed samples, 715 soil samples with our equipment, the in situ XRF, 18 groundwater samples, 12 pond water samples for the mud ponds. You can see some picture here. And the chemical analysis, just in the phase one, are TPH and PCB, soil, 17 heavy metals, soil leached 7 different heavy metals, and groundwater, 17 heavy metals and pH. Just to understand the concentration that we have here for zinc, we found zinc in almost all the samples, up to 250,000 milligrams per kilo. This samples with a 27% of zinc due to the former activity of the plant. Copper, the presence of copper is linked to the zinc present, but this is significantly less in concentration after 15,000 milligrams per kilo. And cadmium and lead, heterogeneous present, but up to 1,500 milligrams per kilo. You can see it's lesser than zinc and copper. We continue with the interpolation information. We have made 136 interpolated maps to understand how it's defined all the heavy metal contamination at the site. We made 9 tractability studies applied to 4 different types of soil at the site with 4 different additives. And to understand and found the depth of the mud ponds, we make 17 resistive electron tomography, as you can see in our last, in this part of the slide. This is one of the profiles that we can make within a specific company. The results of the interpreted maps has allowed us to delimit the heavy metal contamination. As we can see later in another slide, the results confirm the use of stabilization additives as a value remediation technology. And in the north and in the south ponds was identified the base of each mud deposits. Results. The result we have here in after this investigation is that the contamination is concentrated in the production zone in the upper layers of the soil, except in very specific locations in the production zone, the effect by metals has been delimited in depth. Debris zone, this is part of debris zone, significantly lesser contaminated, using mainly associated to waste management process. They have a lot of problem with debris. The integrated study concluded that more than 40,000 cubic meters in the soil zone should be remediated due to heavy metals contamination, mainly, as you can see, zinc, copper, cadmium. The mud pond zones have a total volume around 700,000 cubic meters, and another remediation method just be analyzed in absence of mobilization risk. Groundwater, only shallow groundwater level could be analyzed in this part of the investigation with high levels of pollution in the ponds area of the piezometer monitoring wells that we have installed in the site. There is an uncertainty related to a potential deep aquifer. In this slide, it is presented about the treatability studies results. It is presented a brief summary of the result of the treatability test. One of the 4 additives, the magnesite, has been shown This is the best option for pH adjustment and to reduce the leachate. Also, concrete has shown very good results. For our next phase, it will be proposed a final pilot test with different combination of additives. This is the part of the traceability study with the magnesite that show the results. So you can see that all the leachate are down. So after the different type of soils, for each different type of soil, we can see that with this additive, it's the best option for the traceability production some soils, contaminated soils. Our achievements. We consider, thanks to the multi-method approach, this achievement we have got the next achievements. First of all, the presence of other potential contaminants beside methods was discarded, like PCBs or TPH. We have validated the XRF results in comparison with elaborated chemical analysis, so we can make a lot of analysis in situ and we can make some decisions in the place during the field work. Identification of heavy metal soil contamination and distribution, the detection of shallow and water contamination, especially in the pond area, the identification of heavy metal no leaching concentration in soils, aiming to select a specific radiation option like selective excavation, the determination of mud pond thickness. It's important to understand the volume and the composition from the geophysical and metal analysis. Just we can make it thanks to the geophysical. Selection of a specific remediation treatment for each type of area, and the calculation of the soil volume to treat from the interpolation maps. In this slide, you can see an example of one of our interpolation maps. And we can see in the swallow, this is the swallow one, the swallow level, the higher concentration, and you can see it is in depth. We can go to define that the white color is non-concentration of zinc. So the advantage of an integrative approach is that we can remediate option analysis and selection during this work investigation. The key factors have been identified, for example, the necessity of a stability analysis of the mud ponds, and potential setbacks have been prevented or minimized. Thanks to the coordination between phase 2 and the traceability tests, we can advance with the timetable of our client.
Last minute.
Okay. As the last conclusion, we define all this investigation and multi-method approach to select the best remediation solution for the site. After the sectorization, we decide to study all the parts of the site to create the best remediation solution.